Hi, folks. Welcome back. Game 6 of the World Chess Championship. I have to tell you, the ending of this game is one of the main reasons why, after over 50 years, I still love chess. It is so beautiful and is so artistic. It really is. And once you see the beauty in it, you'll play for the rest of your life. This is an amazing ending. Let's get to it. As white, Liren from China. And as black, Jan and Nepomniachtchi, they call him Nepo, as black from Russia. Now, it's, I like this game in part because of the fact that they play an opening that I don't know if it's been played in a World Championship game in many, many years. It's an opening that I use quite often. I could be better at it, but I like it, is the London system. So let's get to it. Ding is white, Nepo is black. Let's go through the first few moves here of the London system. You see the bishop goes to f4, standard stuff. The c-pawn goes up for black. The d-pawn, e-pawn comes up to protect. Knight comes up. Like on b goes to d2, just moving your pieces. Pawn takes, pawn takes. A lot of the time they don't take, they push. Bishop goes there, and that's a good spot for that bishop because white wants to go here. He wants to move this bishop here, and that stops that down the road. White just reinforces his d-pawn. e6. As you can see, black wants to restrict the movements of the light-squared bishop. So what do you do with it? Now, I put it on e2, right in front of the king. That's probably not a good idea. I'm going to have to try what Liren's been doing. He goes to b5. Now, as you can see with all my arrows there, it's a chance for the bishop to escape. In other words, if the a-pawn hits the bishop, bishop retreats to a4, the b-pawn comes up, the bishop can retreat to either b3 or c2. Now, black puts up a bishop to d6, because that's a really good bishop for white. Now, what does white do here? There's many different things they can do. They can move the bishop off, which they won't. They can move the bishop back to d3. Bishop takes, and then the h-pawn takes, opening up a file. You can still castle on that side, but what do you do? What do you do? White just says, let's just get rid of it. Bishop takes. Queen takes. Now, that knight is still pinned on c6, but the queen is guarding it now. So that way, if this knight comes up, or the queen comes here, it's got to protect her. Besides the pawn. White just castles. Rook goes to e1. I forget to do that a lot myself in the London. You're on the semi-open file. Semi-open means none of your pieces, or your pawns, I should say, are on this file. Only your enemy's pawns, and that's the semi-open file. So he covers that. Now let's look at the computer on off screen. The computer likes knight d7, rook a to c8, which probably I would do, or rook on f to b8. Getting a pawn storm going with the two rooks behind it. I'm not so hot on that. Nepo decides to go h6. Now, these guys have been studying their openings, their theory, as they call it, for a very long time and know variations very deep. I don't think Nepomniachtchi, even though I'm sure he studied the black side of a London a million times, I don't think he was prepared for this one as he normally is, because I don't think he would think that Liren having to win would play the London system, even though it's a solid opening. You know, he'd move the h-pawn because if he moved the knight to h4, that bishop would have nowhere to go. So he decided to leave an escape square for his bishop. He still goes knight e5 anyway. Now, knight can take knight, pawn takes, forks the queen and the knight. Now, there's a variation that stops him from black from losing a piece, but it's incredibly messy. And it's usually done in weekend tournaments about guys like myself or blitz games just for fun. This is a world championship. So Naples decided I'm sure he figured it out, but it's just too messy. You can go through it and stop the video if you want to. If black plays knight takes, knight, pawn takes, queen goes to b6, and you can fill in the rest of yourself. He just retreats the knight to e7. a4. Very interesting move. This stops the pawns, the A and B pawns, from chasing off that bishop. And you'll see in a second here, now he can't go. He can't go b5. Pawn takes, rook takes, or maybe even bishop takes pawn, you lose a pawn. Knight to d7. Now, white's plan is to bring that bishop on d2, bring it to b3, and then cement him on c5. But in order to do that, he's got to push the a pawn to a5 to stop the b pawn from chasing off the knight. Knight takes, queen takes, and there's the a5, anticipating that knight to come up. And everybody can see it, including Naples. Queen to c7. Now what he's doing is putting pressure. Black's putting pressure on his c pawn. And what I mean by that is now white cannot move the b pawn because the c pawn will be unprotected. So Naples is just making sure that he can't do that. So he puts the queen out to guard that pawn. At the same time, put a queen in a better spot that's more out in the open to maybe cause some damage or problems for black. Rook off to c8. I don't know why I didn't play the a rook, but these guys know better than me. I probably would have played the a rook instead. And this next move is very, very interesting. You want to advance the b pawn, but you want to keep, you got a double attack from the queen and the rook. So how you defend it again? Now, I would have went along with my plan, knight to b3, knight to c5. But he goes rook a3, which is a really awkward place for that rook, but he's doing pretty good duty there. Bishop g6. He backs up the bishop. One, he's probably afraid the g-pawn is going to come up and maybe get a pawn storm going, which probably won't happen, but you've got to make sure you guard for it. And plus the fact sometimes your own piece is getting away with your other pieces, and that knight would be much better served, I think, on f5. Knight to b3. White's going along with his plan. Now this is where I think Naples makes an error. Knight c6 is the computer move. b5 is also another choice. Putting to test to the a pawn, whether to take it in passant or not and open the game up. Naples just goes knight to c6. Now I understand why he did it. I get it. It's a double attack on the a pawn, so it freezes that knight temporarily. But then there's some tactical issues with the knight and the rooks, and you'll see. Queen to g3. He's offering the trade of queens, which really surprised me because is he confident in his position enough he thinks he can win in the late, middle, early end game? Remember, Ding Liren is down by 1 game. The score is now 3-2. He needs to win, and he has white. And that's usually when these top grandmasters usually pick their wins. You have an advantage with white. You move first. More than likely get to pick the opening, which you've prepared for. And all the pluses that go along with moving first and being white. Naples, here he is now, up 3-2. This isn't a great position for black, but it's not lousy either. I think he could draw this fairly easily. And I think as black, Naples should have traded and just drew the game and moved on to the next game. Tomorrow's a rest day, and then play white the following day. We decided to move the queen. You're going to see later that might have been such a great decision. Now, this is a move here that everybody shakes their head, scratches their head and shakes their head and goes, what's that all about? H4. That's a really good move. And people are saying, well, you know what, John, you can't do that. That weakens your king. No, really it doesn't. Not when it's the H-pawn. You're going to see later that H-pawn plays a significant role. He moves the rook to E8. Now he wants to move his D-pawn. He's getting impatient. He wants to open up the position a little bit. Even though he'll have an isolated d pawn, black will, he wants to open things up. Knight goes right to c5, which was his plan to begin with, and black goes e5. What to do, what to do? What would you do? Honestly, what would you do if you were white? Stop the video. This is an interesting position. And Ding Liren takes a computer move. I think most of us will play b4 and then put the rook on the b file behind the b pawn. But he played rook b3, the computer move. And you're going to see, they said later, I think somebody at the press conference said, Ding Liren, towards the end of the game, played 15, 20 moves in a row that were the top computer moves. Top computer moves with powerful computers. Knight takes. Rook takes. Now the queen is under attack because he moved the knight to take that pawn. What to do, what to do? The computer likes queen to f6. And that's what Nepo did. Now look here, we got a rook hanging. What do you do? What do you do? Do you take the rook with check? Rook takes and then move the rook on b3? Or you just move the rook now? Now, look at what's going on here. Even if rook takes, pawn takes, or queen takes, pawn takes more than likely. Now you've got these 4 pawns. You're going to be coming down 4 on 3. I like that a lot better. But he decided to go knight to c4, hitting the rook. Okay, so what do you do? Do you take it with the bishop? Do you play rook takes rook? Do you move the rook on a3? And the best move by far, and in fact, a decent advantage for white is bishop takes, and that's what he did. And after pawn takes, h5. Bishop can't take now. The bishop really has nowhere to go. It can't go anywhere worth anything. He has to go to c2 to try to protect his c-pawn. But the fact of the matter is now knight takes. Now everybody's thinking, well, why don't you just play rook to b8, hitting the knight, and that way you can take the b-pawn. Well, it's not so simple, actually. And the computer likes rook takes rook or queen to b6, and that's what Nepo did. Hitting the pawn and the knight. Now, the knight looks trapped, but it's not. Knight to d6. And everybody's saying, well, why can't you just play queen takes knight? Because after queen takes knight, rook would take check on the king, and the queen here is lost. So that knight wasn't trapped. Rook takes, queen takes. I think a lot of people would have played pawn takes, but it doesn't make it, the d pawn doesn't end up being a passed pawn anymore. If you take with a pawn, now the e pawn is not passed. So he goes along and takes. Rook to a5. This is fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. It's starting to get hairy. On the computer off screen is about 1.5 points, maybe a little bit less advantage for white. Now, is that pawn for free? I don't know. Let's take a look. Let's take it instead. Let's take queen takes. And what happens is knight e8. Threatening mate. The rook has to take. Queen takes check. King goes to h7. and rook goes to d5. And it's a huge advantage for white. A huge advantage for white. Over 5 points. This is resignable. This is resignable. So let's go back. King to h7. Rook goes to c5, going after the pawn. Queen to c1. Check. There's no perpetual because you can't check because the queen's guarding the f4 square. So that's out. And this is where I think the mistake, even though the computer thinks is the number one move, it's probably the best move in a crappy situation. And that's weakening your king structure is f6. But I don't think there's anything else black could have done. I think this game is already lost, even though it's less than 2-point advantage for white right now. The material is even. So queen to g3. What else can he do? Push the pawn. It's his only asset that he has. He couldn't save the other one. Knight takes c4. a4. Just keep going. What else can you do? Knight to e3. Just methodically come around. Like he's got all the time in the world, which he does. Bishop here, trying to safeguard the advance of black's a-pawn. Rook to c7, threatening mate. No, as they say, mate in one must be respected, right? The only way he can stop it, of course, is putting the rook to g8. And, of course, white knew that. But instead of moving the knight, the rook, behind the pawn, he figures he still has time. Knight here. Now, that threatens a lot. And you're going to see the beauty of chess coming up here in a moment, which makes this game so beautiful. He's threatening knight takes f6 check, which will win the rook. So he moves the king. And, of course, now he moves the rook over. a3. Just keep going. What else can he do? Knight to e7. Look at that king cornered. And he threatens the rook. What is he going to do? He goes rook f8. And that's where he loses it. Now, the next move here is number 3 on the computer list. Rook to b7 is the choice of the computer. And I can see why. Rook to b7, queen to g5, queen takes g5, f takes, rook takes b1. He loses a piece. And the computer likes that, of course, because there's a huge material advantage. But the fact of the matter is, this move isn't even on the computer list. And I like it a lot. And he goes d5. Now, the computer said they went from a 5.5-point advantage to a 2.5-point advantage. It's still losing, but this makes it much prettier. And I don't think that's why he did it. But this is such a beautiful sequence. Queen to a2. Queen to c7. What he's threatening, even if white queens, the threat is check. If bishop takes, queen mates. If the king moves, queen mates. So he moves the king to h7 to stop the check. And it says mate in 18 on the computer, but knight to g6. Rook to g8 to guard the mate square. And stop the video if you can find this move. What a beautiful, beautiful move. It's just gorgeous. And by the way, if you notice, this queen can't check the white king. The white knight is guarding that square as well as the queen. See if you can find the next move for white, which causes resignation immediately. Queen f7. Black looked at it and looked at it and looked at it. Can you see why? Now, this pawn on d5 is playing a very crucial role. It's guarding this square. Why did black resign? What could he possibly do? Now, oddly enough, the computer's move is queen to f7 check, giving up the queen. When the queen gives herself up like that, you know it's mate. But we'll say you queen. What do you do now? You just take the queen and then you're up. But what do you do now? So we know that's not it. So let's go back. What can black do instead? We'll just do any move here. We'll just go bishop takes. Pawn takes. Check. King has to go to h8. Queen checks. Takes. Mate.
Mate.
No? What's another choice? Queen here? Does that help? Nope. Queen takes g8 check. King takes. Rook to a8. King to f7. Mate. And as you can see, that d-pawn is guarding the last escape square. Queens and knights are the best pieces to coordinate, but also rooks and knights coordinate very well together for the same reason. It's an amazing, it was an amazing game, I think, in a world championship match. Was it the best quality chess in the world? Yeah, I think it was. I think it was, frankly. Just because there's been 4 decisive games, I believe now, the score is now 3-3. 2 draws and 4 decisive games, which is a lot for a championship game. But I wanted you to show you this to show you that the beauty of chess. I love the fact that if bishop takes, pawn takes, check, king has to move, and this rook decides to mate. It's absolutely great. Absolutely great. This is why I love chess so much. It's such a beautiful game. And I'll tell you the truth, Nepomniachtchi, I'm sure he was gutted emotionally. He was up 1 game, and I think he had a chance to draw it by trading the queens. But decided he wanted to play on. Now, I'm not sure if he was trying to go for blood or he was being impatient towards the end of the first time control. He should have took more time. I think he was losing his patience. He was getting a little flustered that he didn't get the position he thought he should get. And all these mental things are going through your mind, whether you're playing the World Championship or you play in weekend tournaments like I have for the last 50 years. It's an amazing game. It's also a very cruel game. And there it is, folks. I just think that ending is so beautiful. Let me know what you think. Chess will be around. There'll be games, video games, other games. Chess will always, always, always stand the test of time for difficulty and also artistry and beauty. And once you play chess long enough and you start seeing the beauty in it, you'll always see it. And that's why I love the game so much. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.